I do a lot of watching of YouTube, because there's lots of useful stuff on there, and as I've said before, freely, I watch a lot of tech videos by a lot of prominent YouTube creators. Curiously, almost all of them are based in America and Canada. A lot in Canada actually, and they actually are quite good. They're well resourced. They're well produced. We've had episodes before. We've talked about studio setups for these guys. I'd love to have some of that as well if you had the cash to pay for it. But a new story came out about the Linus Media Group, and in particular Linus Tech Tips, and the subsequent YouTube channels associated with that company. And I've watched Linus off and on from time to time as well, because he does, or I thought he did some good coverage of PC hardware specifically, et cetera, et cetera. But what caught my attention here, which is, it obviously blew up as a controversy, was that, I just saw a video come up in the feed with his face on it that said something along the lines of, "What do we do now?" And it's like, oh, okay. So I hit play, and then it's not him. It's like his board on the company, one by one, explaining that they're going to cease production. They're going to investigate all the claims that were made against them, which it would appear to be a combination of journalistic ethics being breached, for lack of a better term, and then some more worrying HR matters that surfaced. And as a result of that, Linus is sort of towards the end of the pack of interviews, where he's actually saying that he's accepted a demotion to chief vision officer as opposed to the CEO. And it all just seems like quite unsavory, I guess, if for lack of a better term. But what also sort of stuck out to me is that I thought a lot of these guys and women as well were just individuals. They started a channel, they got big, they started making money, then they started hiring people to help them. And I thought that it was a very sort of tight-knit sort of startup type situation, where it wasn't necessarily incorporated or like a huge concern in terms of that. But they seem to have run into the classic company traditional company issue of when things like this happen. And then the question is that they've all been part of the Wild West for so long, trailblazing their way through media reporting on tech, etc. And it turns out they're stumbling into some areas that a lot of traditional media companies and other companies as well have have found themselves in when something goes wrong.
Well, that's it. You've hit the nail on the head there, Ben. It would have been so much fun when they started it all up and they were just hanging around and doing content videos, and next minute they start making money. But it's still fun, and you're hiring some good equipment, you're getting better equipment, you're getting better products, you're making more money, and you're loving life. You're on your top of YouTube. It's brilliant. And then you think, well, like I could get a bit more investment and we could turn this into a really happening startup, and I can be CEO of my own startup, and we'll just keep on making content and doing things the way we've been doing it. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be fun. It's going to be excellent. But as soon as you become a company, certain responsibilities go with being on the board of that company, and certain responsibilities come with being CEO of your own startup. And I think this is a classic instance here, where the roots of the company, are very different to an actual corporate structure and a corporate culture. And I think every charge that's been made against them stems from that. So it's unfortunate. It's sad. It's probably wrong, but it's happened, and now they're going to have to go through Finkenstein's process. Sorry, where they're going to have to come out and apologise. They're going to have to say it wasn't really their fault, and then they have to come out and say that it'll never happen again, and then they'll just all get on with it, I guess.
It's interesting, isn't it, that it steps into this area of when personal ethics cross over into work ethics, and that the two things are actually discrete entities, for lack of a better term. And you have to be careful how, because personal ethics are whatever you think is ethical, and then there's the work ethics or the company ethics, which is a set of ethics to, I guess, maintain integrity in that company, or a perceived integrity in that company, a public perception of that company. And I think in these particular situations where it started in a personal space and then morphed into this sort of company structure where more considerations were concerned, you'd have to be it's hard. I can imagine that would be a very hard transition to make if you're not aware or are not being advised of the pitfalls that are associated when you make that transition, because it wouldn't have been an off and on thing. It wouldn't have happened overnight. They were, went from a little YouTube channel to a big company making big money or whatever. It would have been a gradual thing, and there was a lot of blurring of lines, like maybe even mentally just trying to keep on top of all of that.
Oh, look, I think you're right. And you made this point when we were talking before, but, this is effectively someone who's gone from being an influencer to being a corporation. And, you know, we all know that influencers can be careless with the truth and, embellish and say what they like because, after all, they're just people and whatever they're doing is just entertainment. But once you become a company, well, then there are certain laws that restrict you from lying or cheating or providing an unsafe workplace. And, if you want to be CEO, you really need to be across that. And any management that's in place within that organisation needs to ensure that, corners aren't being cut and people aren't doing the wrong thing. And I really don't think that oversight was present in this organisation.
Yeah, and just finally, and I think this is a more broader issue beyond this particular story, is the idea of what happens when you transition from being small to being a large concern, say like in the sense of audience. So you're now reaching people. People are listening to you. People are taking your opinions. They're reacting to them. They're acting on them, etc., etc. And I think there's that broader issue. Obviously, influencers are sitting in that murky grey area where they can get away with things. But it does, beg the question, like across the board, whether you've got like a huge podcast or you've got any sort of reach where you can actually influence people and what they're saying, that it almost by definition, even if you don't want anything to do with it, you can't get away from the integrity component of what you're doing. So in other words, you can't just go, once you establish that kind of influence in the public, you can't just go off tangent and do whatever you want, with at least without consequences.
That's absolutely correct. And, I think, you have to be mindful of that. What starts as fun, if you start to make money, becomes a very serious business.
Absolutely. All right, well, we'll watch that one. I guess I won't be seeing any videos from Linus anytime soon. It would seem. I, had him on the queue there. I'll just have to watch some of the others. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
It will, and let's hope that for his sake that they can work through it.